What if Rob Lucci fought every single Straw Hat, one at a time, with nobody allowed to tap in for anybody else? This isn't the man who lost at Enies Lobby, because he's awakened now, and the last time anyone saw him, he was trading hits with Gear 5 Luffy. So how far down the crew does he get before somebody actually stops him? And whose number do you think is going to make you angry? Let's set some rules up first. Rule 1. This is all of them at their peak forms right now. So everything they've shown us is on the table, nothing's held back, and Lucci gets his awakening. Rule 2. It's one-on-one, on flat open ground, with no ocean anywhere near it, and no help coming. And Rule 3. Every fight ends with a number out of 100, and that number is their chance of winning, not their chance of surviving, because those two things are very far apart. Before any of this starts, you need to know what Lucci actually is now, because most people still picture the guy from Enies Lobby, and that guy is gone. He ate the cat fruit, model leopard, and on Egghead he awakened it, which for an animal fruit means his body stops being a body and starts being a weapon, so he moves faster, he hits harder, and he shrugs off damage that should have ended the fight 10 minutes earlier. On top of that, he's a master of the 6 powers, the fighting style the government's assassins get raised on. He moves so fast he vanishes. He kicks off the air to fly. He fires his finger through a person like a bullet. He kicks and the air itself cuts you. And he can go completely limp so your punch slides off him like it hit wet paper. But 2 of those are the whole video, so hold on to them. The first one's called Tekai, and it turns his entire body as hard as iron. So a normal hit lands on him and does absolutely nothing. The second isn't a technique at all. It's observation hockey, and it means he feels where you're going to be before you've moved. So he isn't dodging your attack, he's dodging the attack you haven't thrown yet. Put those 2 together, and there's one question that decides all 10 of these fights. And it isn't who's stronger, it's whether you can make him bleed at all. Because if you can't hurt iron, and you can't touch a man who reads your mind, then nothing else you can do actually matters. So let's start at the bottom. Okay, so what happens if Rob Lucci fights Nami? Well, she's the weakest fighter on the crew, and everybody knows it. But she isn't the joke people think she is anymore. Because after Wano, her Klimattact has Zeus living inside it, and Zeus is a piece of Big Mom's own soul. So that isn't a party trick, that's real lightning whenever she wants it. The problem is everything around it. Her whole style is setting up the weather first, building the clouds, and cooling the air before she fires. And setting up takes seconds she doesn't have against a man who crosses a room before you finish blinking. And her backup plan is worse. Nami wins fights by making people lose track of her, with fog and rain and mirages. But fog only works on eyes, and Lucci doesn't need his eyes. He could stand in the middle of her thickest cloud with them shut, and still know exactly where she is. So the only version of this where Nami wins is the one where her very first Thunderbolt tempo lands clean, before he's decided she's worth taking seriously. That's the whole plan, and it needs him to be careless. Nami's chance of winning, 5%. Now here's where it gets interesting, because Usopp's number is higher than Nami's, and a lot of people are going to hate that. Usopp has observation hockey too, and his is genuinely elite, because this is the guy who shot Sugar off a balcony from so far away he couldn't even see her face, while Trafalgar Law stood right next to him, unable to do a thing about it. Usopp sees things coming that Zoro would miss. And the way he fights is the one thing that actually annoys an assassin, because Usopp never enters the room. He's a mile back with Kuro Kabuto and a bag of pop greens. And the important part is what's in that bag, because Tekai hardens skin, and Usopp doesn't attack skin, he attacks lungs. Sleep gas, poison, Tabasco, things you breathe in, and you can turn your body to iron all you like, you still have to breathe. So on paper, Usopp has the cleanest kill of anybody in the bottom half of this crew. But there's a reason it's only 12%. And the reason is Jeppo, because Lucci kicks off the air and flies. So the distance Usopp needs isn't really distance at all. It's about 1.5 seconds. He gets 1 shot, maybe 2, and then the leopard is standing on top of him. Usopp's chance of winning? 12%? So what about Chopper? Because Chopper is the one everybody forgets beat an all-star. Queen was one of Kaido's 3 strongest men, a monster with a rebuilt body and every weapon the beast pirates had lying around. And Chopper put him on the floor. Monster Point is a genuine problem for Lucci, and here's why. Tekai is hardness, and hardness stops a punch. But hardness does nothing about weight. If a 3-story reindeer picks you up and throws you through a hillside, being hard just means you arrive at the hillside in one piece. Chopper doesn't need to cut him, he needs to hit him with a building. But Chopper's fight has a clock on it, and the clock is brutal, because Monster Point lasts 3 minutes. And when it runs out, he isn't a weaker Chopper, he's a tiny deer lying on the ground for hours, completely helpless. So Chopper has to finish this inside 3 minutes, against a man whose entire profession is surviving for 3 minutes. And Lucci has done exactly that his whole career. He doesn't panic, he doesn't rush, and he is extremely comfortable letting you wear yourself out. Chopper's chance of winning, 15%. And this is where the numbers stop going up, because Robin comes in under Chopper. Which sounds wrong, because Robin is the one who beat Black Maria, and her Demonio Fleur is legitimately terrifying, since she grows a giant demon out of nothing that's big enough to hold a person in one hand. And her clutch doesn't punch you, it folds your spine backwards. That's actually a smart angle against Lucci, because a clutch isn't impact, it's leverage. And leverage is the one thing Hardskin doesn't help with. But there's a technique that ruins her entire day, and it's Kami A, where Lucci goes limp like a sheet of paper in the wind and slips straight out of a hold. That is the specific counter to being grabbed, and being grabbed is Robin's only win condition. So her whole fight is hold him still, and his whole life has been training not to be held still. And even when she does catch him, the arms she catches him with are still Robin's arms. They feel everything she feels. And Rankiyaku cuts them off from 30 feet away. Robin's chance of winning, 10%. Okay, now the one that's going to start a fight in the comments. Because Franky comes in at the bottom of this entire middle section. And it isn't because Franky's weak. He beat Sasaki. He's got General Franky. He's got a laser in his stomach that punches through walls. And on raw destruction, he's probably above half this crew. But Franky is the purest example of the problem this whole video is built on, and it's this. Franky has no haki, none. Not observation, not armament, nothing at all. So every single thing he throws is normal metal and normal energy hitting a man whose skin is currently harder than the metal. The radical beam is heat, sure, but Lucci's awakened body is already taking hits from people who wrap haki around their fists, and Franky isn't one of those people. And then there's the speed, because Franky is a big slow machine that has to plant its feet before it fires. And Lucci is a blur that doesn't have to be anywhere in particular. So Franky's entire chance is one radical beam at point-blank range, landing before Lucci reads the wind-up, and reading wind-ups is what Lucci does for a living. Franky's chance of winning, 7%. Now, here's the number that's going to surprise you, because Brook comes in at more than triple Franky, and there's a very stupid, very real reason for it. Every syllable carries a promise, drawing you into a realm where dreams and reality intertwine. Shigan puts a hole through you. Rankiyaku opens you up. And Rokuogan, the move he saves for the end, pushes a shockwave straight through your skin, so it wrecks the organs behind it without leaving a mark on the outside. And that's the attack that nearly finished Luffy at Enies lobby. Brook doesn't have organs. Brook doesn't have skin. Brook is already dead. You can put holes through a skeleton all afternoon and nothing happens. And the single strongest attack in Lucci's arsenal, the one he's been saving, does literally nothing to a man with nothing inside him. And Brook isn't only a gimmick either, because he's one of the 2 or 3 fastest people on that crew. He uses haki, and his sword carries cold with it, so he freezes whatever he cuts. And cold works on a leopard exactly the way it works on anything else. So why isn't it higher? Because Lucci doesn't actually need to kill him. He just needs to break him into enough pieces that he stops moving. And a skeleton is a lot of small bones held together by not very much. So one clean Rankiyaku through the ribs leaves Brook in 2 halves on the floor. But he'll take longer to put down than anybody in the bottom half of this crew, and if you give Brook long enough, Brook lands something. Brook's chance of winning, 22%. And now the crew's real fighters start, and Jinbe is where this gets genuinely close. Jinbe has proper armament haki. He took down Who's Who, and he's got the kind of endurance that let him stand in the middle of Marineford, taking hits that were meant for other people. But the reason he matters here is Fishman Karate. And Fishman Karate is the best answer to Rob Lucci in this entire video. Because it doesn't hit you, it hits the water inside you. A person is mostly water, and Jinbe can grab that water and throw it, so he can stand in front of a man made of iron and still hurt the parts of him that the iron doesn't cover. Tekai is the wall this whole video keeps running into, and Fishman Karate walks straight past the wall like it was never there. So Jinbe should be sitting way higher than 35%. Except, remember the rules from the start. No ocean. Fishman Karate scales with how much water Jinbe can reach. And out on the open sea, he's one of the strongest men alive. But on dry, flat ground, he's working with the moisture in the air and whatever's inside Lucci, and that's a fraction of what he can really do. That rule went in at the beginning, and this is the fight it was quietly waiting for. Put this exact fight in the water, and Jinbei's over 60%. On dry land, he's a very tough man with the right idea, and not enough of it. Jinbei's chance of winning, 35%. Which brings us to Sanji, and Sanji is the first Straw Hat who walks in as the favorite. Start with speed, because speed is what makes Lucci scary, and Sanji cancels it. Skywalk and Geppo are the same technique, since both of them kick off the air to fly, except Sanji's been doing it since Kamabaka, and he's now doing it inside a body his father built in a laboratory. For once, Lucci doesn't get to be the fast one. Then there's the fire, because Ifrit Jambe isn't the old Diable Jambe anymore. It's blue flame, and it's hot enough that when Sanji used it on Queen, the metal on Queen's own body started giving up. That matters enormously here, because Tekai stops force, and fire isn't force. Making your skin hard doesn't make it cool. This is a man who can turn himself to iron, standing in front of somebody who can heat iron. So every second Lucci spends hardened is a second he's holding still in front of a blowtorch. On top of that, Sanji's exoskeleton means he survives hits that would have folded him in half 2 years ago. So Lucci's usual plan of take 1 and land 3 costs a lot more than it used to. So why isn't it 80? 2 reasons. Sanji's new body still isn't fully his, and he's spending part of the fight arguing with the parts of it he doesn't want. So he's never quite as free as Lucci is. And Lucci wins fights with his head, because he studies you, he finds the thing you won't do, and then he makes the fight about that thing. Sanji has a very famous thing he won't do, and Lucci is exactly the kind of man who would bring a woman to the fight. Sanji's chance of winning, 60%. And then there's Zoro, and Zoro is where the whole premise of this video falls apart, in the best possible way. Because everything we've been building on, the iron body and the hardness and the wall that nobody in the bottom half can get through, Zoro simply ignores it. He has Advanced Conqueror's Haki, which is the rarest thing in the series, and what it does is wrap the blade so the cut lands without the blade ever touching you. So Tekai stops whatever hits it, and Zoro doesn't hit it. He cut Kaido, and Kaido's scales had shrugged off every weapon in the world for decades, so a leopard's hide isn't going to be the problem. He's also carrying Enma, a sword that drags more Haki out of him than he means to give, which is dangerous for Zoro, and much worse for whoever is standing in front of him. And the best part is that we've already seen a piece of this happen, because on Egghead, Zoro and Lucci actually crossed swords for real, and Zoro held him, and Lucci walked away from that exchange knowing it. So where's the missing 15%? Zoro's oldest habit. He takes a hit in order to land a better one, and normally that's fine, because Zoro's endurance is inhuman. But Rokuogan doesn't care about endurance, since it goes through the guard and wrecks whatever's underneath. So against almost anybody in the world, tanking a shot is smart. And against this one specific man, tanking a shot is how you lose. Zoro's chance of winning, 85%. And finally, Luffy. And honestly, this one isn't a debate, it's a record. Rob Lucci has fought Monkey D. Luffy twice. The first time was at Enies Lobby, when Luffy was a rookie with a bounty most of the world laughed at, and Lucci lost. The second time was on Egghead, Awakened, at his absolute peak, with everything this video has been describing switched on at once. He lost again. And the reason is that Gear 5 doesn't play by the rules Lucci's entire style is built on. Every technique he owns assumes a fight follows physics, that a hard body stops a punch, that the ground stays ground, and that when you dodge, you end up somewhere else. Nika follows none of that. The floor turns to rubber, the punch stretches in from somewhere it has no business coming from, and the harder Lucci makes himself, the funnier the bounce. Luffy has Advanced Conqueror's Haki as well, so the one wall Lucci relies on isn't even there. The only reason this isn't 100% is fuel, because Gear 5 burns through Luffy fast, and when it stops, he's a puddle on the floor who can't stand up, and Lucci is patient enough to try to still be alive when that happens. That's the 1%. And he'd have to survive the worst fight of his life to earn it. Luffy's chance of winning? 99%. So add it all up, because the real answer isn't sitting in any one of those fights. Rob Lucci beats Nami, Usopp, Chopper, Robin, Franky, Brook, and Jinbe. That's 7 out of 10. He's the underdog against Sanji, he loses to Zoro, and he loses badly to Luffy. Which means the honest version of this question was never, can Lucci beat the Straw Hats? Because he beats most of them, comfortably, one after another. And the only reason that crew survives the day is that 3 of them are monsters. And that's the part worth sitting with. Because Lucci isn't a Yonko, he isn't an admiral, and he isn't even the strongest thing the world government owns. He's their attack dog, and he'd still go through 2/3 of the most famous pirate crew in the world. He's also still out there, still working for them, and he's only just found out what his fruit can really do. So if 7 out of 10 is what the government's dog looks like, the obvious question is what happens the day they send something that isn't on a leash?